Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this case study with Concept3D and Volt EDU. We'll be going over one of Concept3D's solutions, Localist Events today, and we'll be specifically covering the topic around enhancing event management efficiency with Southern Utah University. And with that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Shiro Hatori. I'm the Director of Demand Gen at Concept3D, and I also host the podcast that we sponsor called the Higher Ed Demand Gen Show. And Jill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jill Whitaker. I'm the Director of Web Services here at Southern Utah University. I have been in the SUU Web Services team for the past 23 years now, and I kind of grew up on college campuses, so higher ed is my life.
Fantastic. Awesome. And with that, I'd love to cover the agenda real quick. We'll start with a quick introduction, then we'll cover some of the challenges we see in event calendars, specifically in higher ed. We'll go over some of the challenges Southern Utah University, or SUU, faced in their case study. We'll cover some innovations and improvement opportunities, and then we'll cover a live demo of SUU's event calendar, and we'll finish up with some closing remarks. A little bit about Concept3D. So we help power higher education and support teams that work in marketing, website, admissions, and student engagement. And with that, we have three primary solutions, starting with an interactive campus map, a Localist events calendar, which we'll be covering today, a virtual tour solution called 360 Tours. And lastly, we kind of have a bonus solution that we just launched called My Campus Experience, which is a personalized event calendar and tour experience that we combine into one solution. With that, we'd love to move on to the quick introduction here. What is the importance of event calendars in higher ed? Looking at this from a logistics perspective, can you think of any other industry that has as many customers, affiliates, staff, and visitors on one campus? The average higher ed institution has 6,300 students, with some institutions reaching 60,000 students. And that's exactly why event calendars are so important, right? There comes so much craziness and mess with all the events happening on campus, and the ability to help communicate all the events happening on campus, making sure that you can filter them and find them easily is such a big, important factor for any event calendar in higher ed. And just, from a psychological perspective, or what events really meant for me personally, is that I felt like events were really the backbone of higher ed, right? It's where students come together outside of the classroom, and relationships with the community form, and friendships develop, lifelong friendships develop. And so I think there's just a real big importance on that factor as well. We actually have presented a similar question in other webinars where we've asked our guests who are working in higher ed how many public-facing calendars they own. And the answer we most frequently get is actually more than 50. And so you can imagine that with over 50 public-facing calendars, and maybe there's 2 or 3 webmasters, managing all those calendars becomes a really, really big task really fast, which is why an event calendar solution, or having the right event calendar solution in place, is very, very important. I'd love to start with covering some of the common challenges we see in higher ed when it comes to event calendars. So point number 1 is decentralization. So going back to the poll question before, right? A lot of schools have over 50 calendars. And with 50 calendars that are not syncing or not properly communicating with each other, a lot of issues come into place, right? Like duplications occurring, detailed information missing. And there's just too many calendars to manage if people are separately owning them. So this decentralized model is really, really hard to manage. Number 2 is more of an internal issue, but there's just a lack of robust permissions. So when you're unable to give proper permissions to the right level of authority, you get a lot of inefficient and often burdensome time management and event management for admins and the owners of the calendars. So an example I use commonly is that if you're a student club president of the business school, what kind of permissions should you have, and are you able to give them to that person? Number 3 is the calendar fitting the brand and design of your website and your brand as a whole. We all know, if we work in higher ed, that universities and schools spend tons of effort, time, power into creating their beautiful website. And so your calendar should really reflect that same experience. A thing I like to quote is that your website is the most trafficked building on campus, right? And so the most trafficked building on campus should look just like another building on campus, not an outlier or something that just feels misplaced. And I just wanted to visually explain sort of what some of this decentralization or centralization looks like. So a model we often see is that you want one centralized calendar where academics, which is usually a separate calendar, can feed into the central calendar. You want athletics, which is usually always going to remain a separate calendar, to feed into a centralized calendar. And then you have all your separate school calendars, right? Going back to the business school example, do those business school events feed into the centralized calendar? This is what good could look like when you have centralization of calendars. Going back to point 2 around robust admin permissions, right? Again, going back to the business school model with the president of the business club, you're not going to want them to have access to approve all events around campus, right? You want them to live under just the business school marketing or marketing and events and have the ability to maybe approve events or submit events on behalf of the business club. So this is kind of a 4-layer that you can see, but there's many other options out there to layer permissions and admin permissions. And then lastly, here's what good can also look like when it comes to cohesive branding and matching our website. I've taken an example directly from SUU where you're actually navigating from an events calendar page to the main homepage. If you look at the URL, you're switching between the homepage and a subdomain with sub-events, but the experience feels very similar to what you're going to get from the homepage. This is a great example of that cohesive brand and creating that experience that doesn't feel out of place. And by fixing a lot of the issues we just spoke about, even just those first 3, there's a lot of opportunities and outcomes that come with these fixing those challenges. And so one of those is brand alignment. Another one is increased webmaster or whoever's admin's efficiency, right? You save time, you save headaches, you reduce that burden. From the student perspective and from the school perspective, you'll see more events and more attendance because now everything works properly. Another one is for the student perspective or user perspective, you have better visibility, search, and SEO of events. Another kind of fun outcome of this is that when you have these calendars in place, the systems are easy to use, you create better alignment between teams on events, and there's better collaboration happening internally. And lastly is that you help build more community and in-person connection when you have more events and easier events. With that, I'd love to move on to the case study we have with Localist Events and Southern Utah University. And I would love to pass things over to Jill. Can you tell us a little bit about SUU as well?
Yeah, for sure. SUU is located in the southwest corner of Utah. So that's about 4 hours south of Salt Lake City and about 3 hours north of Las Vegas. And we are located in the midst of a whole bunch of national parks. We actually have the official designation from the National Park System as the University of the Parks. So a lot of our students get to be placed into various state and federal agencies as interns or various things. And it could be a broad range of different majors. You know, you might think a geology student, but we could have a marketing or a management student who gets placed in these organizations. So it's a really cool opportunity. But also because of that and our location, we have a lot of people who participate in outdoorsy activities. And we were even named the most outdoorsy school in the United States a few years ago. You can imagine from that, there are a lot of events happening on campus. There's a lot of fun outside and outdoorsy events, but there are also a lot of typical university events, you know, academic things. And previously, what we had was a whole aggregate of a bunch of separate Google calendars. So everybody had access to a public-facing Google Calendar, and they treated it very much like their very own calendar. The problem is that we would aggregate all of these calendars to try to make an overall view of an entire campus calendar. And since everybody was treating these like their own separate individual calendars, not only would they want to put the events that are specific to their academic department or college, they would also want to put in the different things like university campus closures. So then when the aggregate would roll around to a day that we had the campus closed for a holiday, we would then have like 15 events in a row, campus closed, campus closed, campus closed. And it just really looked sloppy that way. And, you know, it just kind of made for a really disjointed experience for our students and for the community trying to figure out what's happening at the campus. We didn't have any real good ways to filter it. We did try to build our own platform, powering all of this behind, and try to filter it a little bit, but it wasn't as robust as a real platform like Localist. And the more calendars that you add, the slower it gets. It's just a lot of different sources all feeding into this one aggregate. Plus, with all of this, we couldn't really tell how people were using it. We could try to gather some insights based on basic page views and visits. We could try to do some event tracking that we would put into the code, but we couldn't truly see how many people were actually marking themselves as interested in attending an event or saving an event, or how much traffic it was getting, because it was all pulling in from an outside source. So as we were looking at ways to fix our multiple calendar issue, we caught wind that Localist had been acquired by Concept3D. And we were already a customer of Concept3D's with our campus map. And the fact that Localist could integrate directly into our campus map and our campus map could directly integrate into Localist, that seemed like a great opportunity to start exploring this partnership a little bit further. So once we finally got all of the paperwork officially signed and we were able to become Localist customers, we were able to launch really fast. The great thing is that Localist can talk to existing calendars. So we started syncing in all of these Google calendars that we had, and we started shutting them down so that our campus partners couldn't keep adding events to them. And by August 15th, we launched. So you can see that that was just about 2 months that we went through the whole process of getting everything set, from signing everything, and we had all of our calendars set, and we launched our public calendar.
Awesome. Thank you. And your mileage may vary with Concept3D as well. It's all about communication. We can't just do the work without our customers and our partners. And so if our clients and partners are involved and are on top of things, we can definitely launch in 2 months or even shorter. And with that, I'd love to move on to a live demo of SUU's event calendar. Do you want to take this away here, Jill?
Sure. So as you can see right here, this is our live calendar, and this is just a sampling of events that are coming up. The calendar starts off, first of all, with upcoming events, but we were able to break out some focus areas on the main calendar. So you can see academic calendar. Our academic calendar is actually still powered by a Google Calendar because our provost's office maintains the official academic calendar. And so that's fed into the Localist calendar. And we can add in certain tags based on different language used. So campus closures, campus holidays, different things. We are also the home of the Tony Award-winning Utah Shakespeare Festival. So arts are a very big part of our campus. So we have a separate section there for arts. And we have all of the different dance, music, theater, art exhibits, different things like that. So we can feature all of those feeding right into the calendar on the homepage as a featured option. That's also great for the community because people love to be able to come and see a concert or various plays. You'll see a video on there. That's been one of the cool things with Localist is we can do live stream of our concerts and we can attach that right into an event for a specific concert or whatever that might have a live stream attached to it. And leading up to the event, it will then have a little bit of a flag on the calendar event that will say something like a virtual option available. And so then people who are not even in Cedar City could then come to the calendar event and look for the things that have a virtual option and watch the live stream right there. Then if the event is passed, the live stream is still attached to the calendar event. So if it shows up in search results, you can see that right there. And then as Shiro had scrolled down, you can also see our campus map that's powered by Concept3D embedded right in there so that we have all of our different locations that can just embed right into the event page. The other section that we have featured on our homepage is for athletics events. And so we wanted to highlight those. We are importing all of those from our athletics platform, which is powered by Sidearm Sports. What we could have done is just imported all sporting events as one big lump package. But what we chose to do is do an import of separate feeds based on sports. Unfortunately, due to the time of year, it looks like all we have is softball right now. But by doing them as a separate feed for every individual sport, we could attach a different featured image to each of the different categories. And then as we decide to, we can go in and change that featured image out. So at times a year when there are more sports available, we could see a basketball player, a gymnastics, track, we can see softball. They would all be showing their individual icons so that people can see those at a quick glance, what sports they're looking at. And then if you see that red button up there, we have some options for filtering in there. You can filter by different categories, audiences, and those are all things that are customizable in the platform that we set up for our own use case. So these are not just, out of the box things that everybody has to follow. They can be very highly customizable to your specific use case. Since we mentioned the filters, we have a couple of fun filters in our calendar that are kind of unique to our campus. Right here, we have highlighted free food. So there is an instance of food insecurity in college students, but it's also just college students will come if there is food. If you tell them, we're going to have this event, they might be like, I don't know, we'll give you pizza. I'm there. So we wanted to have a way of filtering by free food. We tried to do this with our previous Google Calendar amalgamation, and it just never worked out, because different departments would have an event where they would provide free food, but they also wanted to specify what kind of food they were giving out. So instead of saying free food, they would say, we're going to have pizza, we're going to give out cookies, we're going to do this. But we needed that consistency in language of free food. So with Localist, we made a tag that we added to it. And so people can still specify in their event description what kind of food they're going to be serving, but they can also add the free food tag. And then we can always have a way for students to go through an entire page and see what events have free food. There are some days where they could probably get breakfast, lunch, and dinner at various events just by following the free food tag. We also have a tag in there for tradition keeper. A lot of universities have various traditions that are carried on throughout the years. And what we have done is we have our tradition keeper, which are various things like attending a play or kissing somebody at midnight at the old Sorrel statue on campus, different things like that. But if a student goes through and completes all 50 campus traditions by the time they graduate, then they get a special stole that they can wear at graduation to show that they are a tradition keeper. And so we added in a tag into our Localist events that people could mark if their event falls under the tradition keeper. So you'll see right there on screen, wear red on Friday. It's just kind of a tradition. We wear red on Friday. I'm wearing red, and everybody at SUU likes to wear red whenever we can, but that is one of our official traditions. And so that's in the calendar as well. And people can go through and find those various things. We have audiences inside of our calendar so that we can see if we want to target it toward current students or toward employees or toward the community. We even have an entire newsletter that goes out to members of the community, and it pulls in events from our calendar that are tagged as being for and open to community members so they can see what events are open to them. Our outdoors and our health and wellness departments have even done some yoga classes and things of that nature, which they invite community members, which is kind of fun to see a bunch of college kids, and then you'll see some elderly people in the community come and do yoga with the college kids. It's a lot of fun that way. And we wouldn't have a way of actually disseminating all of this event information without a tool as powerful as Localist. With Localist, we are also able to see a lot of information. We can tap into analytics data on the back end of Localist, and then we can also connect it to Google Analytics so that we can see how people are using our site and how they're coming into it. An example that it kind of blew my mind with launching the calendar. Shortly after we launched our calendar, we had a concert on campus with country music singer Easton Corbin. And all of a sudden, within a few days of launching our calendar, that was something that I found in Google Analytics and Google Search Console, is that had a ton of traffic coming into it. And that's because Localist provides nice SEO pages that are truly optimized for search. Our Google Calendar feeds were not optimized for search. There was no way that a particular event could be flagged in Google search results. But people in the community had heard that this concert was happening. They were searching for Easton Corbin, SUU, and all of a sudden the traffic to this calendar page just skyrocketed. People were coming in so fast, and it was so exciting to see that happen just within days of launching our whole Localist calendar. And that kind of reassured that we were making strides and making all of our information more visible to everybody.
Thank you for sharing all that use case and case study with you. What have some of the results in ROI been like?
The great things have been just knowing that we don't have all of these duplicate events. We have a much cleaner calendar system there so people can see what is happening. That has increased the number of calendars, calendar events. I shouldn't say calendars because it's still one calendar, but it has increased the number of categories and people contributing to the calendar. We've strengthened our connection to the local community so that we can showcase the events that are for anybody, not just for students. I love that it's branded clearly. Google Calendar, if you're not careful with it, it literally looks like a Google Calendar shoved in a web page. This all looks like it's very much SUU's information and SUU's branding. And you can see right there, we've had over 9,000 events submitted and it hasn't even been up and running for a year. Every single day we get email notifications from the calendar platform and it says, you've had this many people sign up to become registered users in your calendar. That means that they are building their own calendars and aggregating events for themselves. And then also hearing people just reference it in meetings around campus. It's like, oh, you should make sure that that gets in the calendars because that will reach a lot more people. It makes me laugh. There are people that will say, oh, put it in Jill's new calendar. And I'm like, it's not mine. It's the university's calendar. And it truly is the university's calendar now. Because before we just had a bunch of disjointed calendars. Now we truly have the university's calendar.
That's awesome. And how many students are currently enrolled at SUU?
We have about 15,000. That's not all full-time, and that includes our online students as well, but we have about 15,000 students.
That's amazing. And so like 9,000 events is a pretty big number. And if you go back one slide to look at the data, you've had over 211,000 views of your calendar, and it's not even August yet. So what, 8 months, and over 62,000 users. So it's really good to see such high metrics for, relative to how many students are enrolled to your institution at the time.
And that's exciting, not only just to see that the hard work that my team has put into it is paying off, but it works to show administration, hey, you gave us money for this. Look at this. It's paying off that way too.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much again for covering the case study and the use case with SUU and Localist Events.
Oh, no problem.
It's fascinating, and I love all the things you're doing with your calendar. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you.
And just a quick recap of Concept3D, right? We help power higher education. Similar to the big numbers we just shared with SUU, we have over 4 million students and users using our platform every year. We serve over 700 campuses, not just Localist Events, but our interactive map that we spoke briefly about and our virtual tour solution. And a lot of our partners and our clients love us. We have a 98% retention rate. What does that mean? It means that we provide really good customer service. And so our client success team really makes friends with the Jills of your school, basically. And we provide as best service as we can, one-on-one, dedicated service. And that's why we have that really high retention rate. And with that, if you're looking into investing in a centralized events calendar or just upping your game on your events calendar, please consider Localist Events and Concept3D. We do truly believe that we are the gold standard of higher ed event calendars. And again, just to reiterate on some of those key points we help reduce IT burden. We help centralize all your calendars into one place to clean up some of that mess. We provide those really nice and easy to use admin permissions that give the right level of access to the right person. We help make sure that your calendar is a replication of the beautiful brand and website you have. And again, we provide that dedicated support, which is why a lot of our customers stay with us. You can read about it on G2 Crowd. We have over 75 reviews and a 4.2 star rating on G2. And thank you again so much for attending our case study webinar. Thank you, Volt EDU.
Thank you.